All right, I'm going to try and make this quick. It's been like a week since the CDC made a change to their advice and guidance. During that intervening week, YouTube has changed their terms of service. You are now allowed to question things in certain cases only. It's marvelous. Thank you, Big Brother, for the freedom. All the way back before, okay, let me put it this way. In October of 2019, I was driving cab and we were warned over the radio with just public service announcements from the stations. Hey, in the news, there's a thing going around. The symptoms are kind of like a chest cold and a flu. Make sure you wash your hands, be careful. And I caught that. And all of the symptoms are the symptoms of COVID. And we found out maybe 2 years after that what had actually happened was that there had been an outbreak at some sporting event that was overseas, as it were. Don't want to get too censored here. And everyone that went home to their native countries, people around them started getting sick very quickly after, and it spread like wildfire. It was like endemic. At that point, we're talking October to November and December of 2019. It was already endemic. Endemic means everyone's gonna get it. It moves faster than prevention can stop, is basically what that means. In the intervening years, I have encountered the different variants. Every time I encounter one of these variants, what would happen is I would get a very brief, very minor, like abridged anime series version of the symptoms. Take a nap, hit some vitamin C, and smoke a couple clove cigarettes, and shit's gone. You feel the immune response kick in when this happens. When you are exposed to something and you got very, very sick the first time, when you are re-exposed to it, there's this in your head that's like a sense of, what's going on. You'd be like, oh, I feel like I got that cold that's going around. Oh, this feels like the flu. Is that the body aches? But when the goof came around, you could tell. And once you had it the first time, you could definitely tell you were exposed to it again. I went 4 months without employment because people didn't want to hire people that were skeptical of masks or of the shot. Now, the rules on YouTube are now that you are allowed to question the efficacy of masks because there is an enormous amount of current, we shall say, not even just modern, current peer review on the matter. Prior to that, the studies came up roughly inconclusive, but there were studies, including ones that are still being cited because they are still repeatable, showing that the different types of masks that they were handing out to people were not effective, and in some cases actually increased the likelihood of infection, as well as other diseases besides the one they were trying to prevent. Things like mold and mildew inhalation, which is not strictly speaking a virus, but if you don't take proper care of your mask and really disinfect it, especially a cloth mask, those things are... Put a cloth mask or any other piece of fabric somewhere on the floor next to your toilet. It doesn't have to touch the toilet, and let it sit there. Take your showers, baths, whatever, brush teeth, shave, whatever, and give it a week, and then check on it. Now, what if that shit was on your face, but performing all the same tasks in presence of all the same moisture and breathing? Imagine you're through that all the time. If that isn't, and bear in mind, a ton of people that were told to wear masks were literally not capable of understanding the science of the mask, of the prevention or anything else. It was simply children, old people, and mentally handicapped people who you couldn't explain this abstract concept to. So instead of, ooh, go to wear a mask, don't want to kill grandma. And all of those people are the ones who are actually at the highest risk of, if it's a bad mask, of getting even sicker, because these people would not necessarily be able to all follow the protocols, right? So this is a real meat and potatoes of this topic for me here, as follows. Prior to the pandemic, I'm not just saying this, you can Google this, you can look this up. Prior to the pandemic, there were only a few studies. The efficacy of masks was indeterminate, in that it was certain places seemed to work, certain places didn't seem to work, no particular logic to it. And the gains of prevention or whatever else were along the lines of a single-digit % in overall cases. This is what I mean by endemic. It didn't matter. And pictures and videos of a guy wearing all the different kinds of masks in all the different configurations and blowing vape smoke straight out through. You can see all the places where your air with your vapor aerosolized particles, potentially containing virions in the droplets, would just even straight out the mask. So the science that was conclusive was that the mask does not protect the wearer. The purpose was to try and protect those around the wearer. But from every measurable standpoint, that was simply not the case. And now this has been peer-reviewed and published. And now CDC has changed their tune, and YouTube has changed their rules. They can't keep denying the truth. And the truth was available to know beforehand. Now they just have a whole bunch more. You would not believe some of these stupid-ass conversations and arguments that happened on social media in years past to do with this shit. People defending these protocols, these mandates. Well, it's important. We got to blah, blah, blah. And you're anti-science. So, motherfucker, here is a fucking paper. Motherfucker, here is another fucking paper. Paper. And these stupid asses, these midwits, would pick through and say, oh, well, that one doesn't say that they don't work. It just says inconclusive. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but inconclusive means it doesn't say that they work either. I almost lost my house because I couldn't make a payment. I don't have rent here, but what I have is property tax. You still have to have some kind of income to pay your property tax so that the county don't come and try and harvest your property for profit, resell it. The real cowardice and banality of evil was exposed in a lot of people those last couple years. The only studies that were done were basically in response, this is prior to 2019, basically in response to concerns from among the dental community. Dentistry, people wearing masks, doing stuff literally in your face. The best most of them could come to was that it seemed more an idea that a hyper-focused surgeon might drool on accident. That if you sneeze or whatever, or if you're cutting in and you hit something that squirts, it is more likely to hit your cap, your goggles, and back in the day they didn't wear goggles either. But that kind of leads me to one of those common sense science things, and I'm not saying it like the science, I'm saying like you could test this and prove it if you want. Here's my hypothesis. The transmission vector was mucous membrane contact, fluid exchange. If aerosol particles could make it into your mouth while you're breathing in and out constantly, this causes like turbulence and such in the air moving from your lungs, right? But your eyeballs are exposed, your tear ducts, your tear glands, those are a kind of membrane that can absorb a virus. Your eyes have moisture on them, they can just catch that. You blink and it moves it toward it. Your ears, that earwax, that's a membrane that emits that. Just like your eye boogers, your snot rockets, your spit, your phlegm, these are all ways that could be a possible way in for a virus. And this was all they did. This was all they said you had to do. Now, maybe if you got a mask on, you can't smell the bullshit. Follow the science. Don't be anti-science. You're killing grandmas. No, a Democrat governor of a state who chose not to use the federal assistance because Orange Man bad decided instead it would be a good idea, knowing this would happen, mind you, to put people who are sick for quarantine into nursing homes where old people in poor health, the most literally, like, you're killing grandmas. No, that dude literally killed grandmas. He killed 15,000 people by putting COVID patients in quarantine in nursing homes. He just euthanized in a really horrible way, effectively euthanized a bunch of old people in New York. Science would have shown, in real intellectual honesty, early on, that would be deadly. He had to know, right? So, all the hell I went through, all the shit I had to put up with, and deflect, or dodge, or return to sender. Two and a half years later, we are approaching, in about a month or two here, month and a half, the 3-year anniversary of me catching the OG cough flu that nobody thought was COVID until much later. Three years. I have been right about what I'm talking about. I have not changed my tune about what I am talking about in that time. The only times that I've changed my tune is when good science is presented to me. In any case, I would modify my views, my beliefs, or my opinions regarding what I thought I had interpreted and read or whatever. Here's the funny part. I said this before. There were studies already on the 3 main types of masks. And I would explain this to people and they would look at me like, what? They just glaze over. People call that the fluoride eyes. I don't know if that's really caused by fluoride or if that's just dissociation in their mind because the cognitive dissonance between a guy who is probably double their IQ that is also presenting peer-reviewed science has explained how the biases are fair, the sample size is good, and that this appears to be an honest appraisal of the data. It says here, check it out. Them fabric shits that everybody's grandma and aunt sewed together, hair ties and freaking felt fabric or whatever. Little kids all running around because they couldn't wear a surgical mask. They couldn't wear I mean, they could try, but it wouldn't work. Little kids. It's little kids, right? And the other thing, though, kids didn't die from this, except for maybe 1 or 2 extremely, extremely ill children. Most kids didn't even get it. If they did, they didn't even notice. The little claw fuckers have like a 3% catch rate, 97% pass through. Okay? This is the same kind of fail rate as chemotherapy. I don't know if you knew that. 3% success, 97% fail. It's the same. Most does not get dealt with. But that's what most people wore. Because you gotta obey the rules. You gotta do the thing they tell you so you can get your money because you gotta eat. By making people obedient, they rendered them dependent. And once they are dependent, they can require further obedience to continue receiving their dependent care. Surgical masks are intended for surgical environments. That is to say, fully sterile environments. And in a fully sterile environment, I think you get like 45 minutes to an hour tops of mask use before you need to switch out. And you can put a swab to that, stick that bitch in a Petri and let it go and watch. You can do it from the outside. It doesn't matter. Wearing them in a non-sterile environment gives you maybe 15-20 minutes of use before it really is too nasty to wear. How many people wore them dumbass light blue things coming in the package, and you saw the video of the dudes that were making the masks, throwing them on the floor, and the other dudes picking them up, stacking them, plastic them. That's sanitary, isn't it? Out of sight, out of mind. As long as you don't think about the stuff, how it's made, who's making it, or what it went through while it was being made, as long as you do the thing you were told to do so that you can continue to get the money so that you can eat. N95s capture 95%, roughly, of particles that were, I think, 0.3 microns in size and larger. The virion of COVID is 0.125. It's way smaller. Droplets containing that could go straight through if they were 0.2 microns. This would be some water on a COVID. So those N95 masks did not, nor do they provide 95% catch rate for COVID. They might be better, but they're certainly not the best. And unless them shits are sealed in like a gas mask, and again, goggles and something to cover your ears too, they're all mucous membranes. Last week, right? It's the end of August of 2022 as I say this and record this. Last week, the United States government's scientific medical authority came around to the science that was available 3 years ago that they chose to ignore for obviously political and tyrannical reasons. In closing, I will repeat, not only was I right, but I suffered for being right. My advice is to think harder, think twice, really consider whether anything you are told you must do is actually in your best interest and what would happen if you don't. The fact is that if people had not shown such great cowardice, such banality in the face of evil, and just said, go fuck yourself, no, I will not, they couldn't have shut us down. The supply chain would not have been disrupted. Every other country in the world, all the people did the same thing everywhere. They are all going through the same kind of hardship that we are going through here. If we, as people, not just me and a handful of others, but all of y'all too, had just said, you say I have to do what? I have to do what? Don't have to do anything. You're gonna pull a gun and threaten me to make me do something? You don't make me do anything. Lots of people keep this opinion in their minds and then put a mask on. Either they believed the bullshit science, which is stupid because it was there. Lots of people were pointing out that it was there and saying, no, see, this is what it says. And even then it didn't matter. Nobody wanted to hear it. If everybody had said, go fuck yourself instead, our country would be number one in the world right now because we would not have had the supply chain disruptions in-house. There might be issues getting shit from other countries. The Chinese blockade of goods outside California would have still happened. Ooh, because of COVID. If we hadn't done the shutdowns, that shit could have landed. There would have been literally no change to the mortality figures, the infection rates, or anything else. Because about 6 months before they declared the pandemic to be a thing and said, hey, we need to start taking measures. It had already been released and become endemic. Everybody was already exposed. That's really all I got. My point should be blatant and obvious. Them fuckers lied. How many times are you going to let people lie to you? And just, oh fuck, I guess I got fooled again. How many other things have they lied to you about that you just haven't figured out yet? How do you prevent that? You have to learn how to detect bullshit. And when you see bullshit, you have to call it out. And even if everybody else is like, hey man, peer pressure though, but the news and the government and the social media, they're going to censor you. Bitch, I'm not on social media. This is it right here. They just relaxed a set of rules, and so I'm making a statement. Next time this shit comes around like that, dig into it. If somebody says, hey, I got some science that says that they're lying, consider that it's probably right. Don't be a brainwashed propaganda zombie. Be a free-thinking human being. And exercise your right to say, go fuck yourself. Next time anybody in any position of authority tries to force you to do something that the science behind their supposed medical reasons does not add up. So, oh, that's bullshit. Fuck you. That's it. That is it. Next time, if there is a next time, that's what we all need to do. And I'll tell you, there are other places where everybody could get together and say, go fuck yourself without getting violent. And change could be made. But only if everybody does it. Not talking communism. I'm talking about things like if literally everyone stopped paying their taxes all at the same time. The government could do nothing. If you think there's corruption, if you think there's problems, if you think that the system is inherently racist or patriarchal or a bunch of kid fuckers. However, from wherever you come, however you look at it, you should be looking at, wow, they're not right. And the next time, these people who are not right say, you need to do what we say. If everybody says, go fuck yourself, they get stopped. Likewise, the same. If everybody was to stop paying into their income tax, paying state tax, paying any and all taxes, eventually government comes grinding to a halt. And honestly, as much damage as they seem to do with their measures and policies to fix things, like the Inflation Reduction Act is going to make inflation worse, getting rid of them might be better. Just saying.